It's really good to have all of you here. I don't know if I've met many of you, but I've met a lot of you. And I was actually here for the last fall retreat, hearing confessions. So now I'm giving talks. It's like I'm moving up in the world, you know? Really excited to be here. And if you look up at my lovely slide up here, the theme of the retreat is called The Battle. The Battle. We're going to be talking about the battle that is going on for your soul. And we're going to be looking at it from a bunch of different angles, from different parts. And if you notice, in really small letters under there, part 1 is defeat. Defeat, which sounds really sad. Like, Father Isaac, why are you starting on such a low note? Well, before we get too defeatist here, I want to start by showing you a picture of a super happy baby. So if maybe you can put that up there. So, I know, so nice. So this is Father Isaac when he was a baby. And if you notice, I was very happy, right? What's not to be happy about when you're a baby? People feed you, you take naps, life is good. But if you look very closely, you'll see that I'm drinking out of a Montreal Canadiens bottle. Go Habs, go. Who are my Habs fans in here, if you dare? Okay, a good amount, there we go. So, from an early age, as you can tell, my parents brought me up, you can even say indoctrinated me, into being a Habs fan, putting it on even their baby's bottles so I knew where I would stand as I got older. And they are die-hard Habs fans. My whole family is. You're allowed to have a secondary team. Me and my 6 siblings were allowed to have a secondary team, but you're not allowed to cheer for them when the Habs are playing, right? So it's a very, very serious deal. But I'm not just a Habs fan because my parents brought me up that way. I'm also a Habs fan because Carey Price, who was the goalie of the Habs for many years, a very famous goalie, is actually my doppelganger. He's my absolute lookalike. So it's pretty scary, actually. So that's a picture of me right before I was ordained. But like the look, the beard, like.
Which one's you?
Yeah, the one being interviewed by CBC. So I was raised as a Habs fan, but there are so many other parts of my life that I could tell you about, right? I'm much more dimensional than a Habs fan, thank God. And we use stories to tell other people about our identity. We share with people stories to convey who we are. So maybe I'll get the next slide up. You come from a certain story, you come from a certain culture, a certain background, and your story is a huge part of who you are as a person. So some of the things that we use to tell people about ourselves is maybe what we do, where we work, what kind of program you're in, where you're heading, whether you're at SMU, whether you're at Dal, all these kinds of things where you share about yourself through stories. So for myself, my first job was at Tim Hortons. Worked at Tim Hortons, slinging coffee to our devoted fans. Some of our fans were a little too devoted. I remember once I was working the night shift, it was almost midnight, and this lady came in and she ordered 3 extra large coffees. So I was like, wow, are you like doing a coffee run for your friends, or are you on a road trip? And she said, oh no, I'm gonna drink 1 on the way home, I'm gonna drink 1 right before bed, and I'm gonna drink the 3rd one in the morning. I'm gonna put it in the fridge so that the first thing I do when I wake up is have a Tim Hortons coffee waiting for me. I was like, okay, crazy lady. Like, wow, you have an addiction. This is really sad. I actually was like, I don't know if I can in good conscience serve you this coffee. Like, it felt like, you know, I'm not really a fast food worker anymore. I'm like their drug dealer at this point. So, yeah, worked at Tim Hortons. You all come from your own place where you're going to school, you're going to work. This is part of your identity. We also talk about our identity in terms of our relationships. Who we're in relationship with, where we've come from. So some of you might say, oh, I'm dating this person, or I come from this family. Maybe later in life it'll be like, oh, I'm married to this person. So that picture is me when I went home to do my sister's wedding. It was really fun to tell people I'm marrying my sister. Really fun. The looks I got were priceless. They were like, Father Isaac, I thought you were from Ontario, not Alabama or something. But she would now introduce herself in lieu of her husband, and he would do the same for her. They're in a family together. Now, of course, as a priest, I don't have a family of my own. As priests, we take 3 promises. So one promise I take is simplicity of life, which means I live simply, I try to live poorly. The other promise we take is one of obedience, so I'm obedient to the bishop, my superiors. And the third one I take is celibacy, so I don't get married. So if you want to put it simply, it's no money, no honey, and do what you're told. That's my one. Or if you want to put it another way, no bling bling, no sweet thing, do what you're told. It's always do what you're told. Might get a tattoo of it just to remind myself, we'll see. But you can tell stories about your identity as well in terms of your family, your relationships, and people will do this. Like, oh, I know your dad, I used to work with your mom, those kinds of things, right? And then people will also tell stories about their identity through their culture, through where they come from. So I'm Canadian, if you haven't guessed by now, because Habs fan and worked at Tim Hortons. It's okay, you'll catch up with the rest of us. Like one day it'll all be good. This retreat will be good for you. But for the rest of you, like, you probably would share what country you're from, how you got to Canada, if you were born in Canada, what foods your family makes, what traditions you come from. These are all stories that we share to convey our identity. And I think right now, in our culture, there's a lot of confusion because people are being told that you have to figure out your own identity independent of any story. You have to figure it out yourself. You have to figure out what it means to be true to yourself, regardless of any wider story that you can plug yourself into. Maybe you're experiencing this right now in university. Like, man, am I in this program or this program? Am I going to hang out with this group of friends or this group of friends? What kind of a person am I shaping myself to become? There can be a lot of pressure, a lot of anxiety in trying to do that. Because you're thinking, what if I'm getting this wrong? What if this isn't the right program for me? Or what if these friends are making me into someone that I don't want to be in the future? It can be really stressful. It can cause a lot of anxiety. And maybe you're thinking, well, Father Isaac, I came in here without any anxiety at all, but I'm certainly feeling anxious now. So thank you very much for that. But I want to tell you a story that impacts your identity. And it's a story that maybe you haven't thought too much about, and it's God's story. It's the story that God is writing through all of human history, and he's writing in your life. Of course, Father Isaac, you're a priest. You've got to tell me God's story. That's what you get paid to do. You're right, it is. And you're going to get it. You're going to get God's story. But I'm not being glib about it. I honestly think that the story that God is writing plays so much a role in the identity, who you are at your very core, and you need to hear about it because it shapes the person that you are becoming. And our story begins with the fact that there was a creator, and that this creator, God, is real. God is real. He's all powerful. He's all knowing. He's all present. He's all good. Perhaps most importantly, he's all good. He's all loving. And this God decided to create. Out of a free choice, he decided to create. And we don't exactly know how he did it, but he created the planets, the stars, the galaxies, the nebula, all of it. Just showing just how big this creator is. And in our planet in particular, I don't know if he did it on other planets, the evidence is still out on that, but we'll see. But on our planet specifically, he filled it with life. Carved out the oceans and the mountains, and he filled it with plants, with fish, with birds, with animals and bugs and all kinds of things. But his crowning masterpiece that God made was human beings. Was me and you. When God created humans, he did it in a way that was different from the rest of creation. And it says in Genesis, God says, "Let us make man in our own image, after our likeness, and let them have dominion over the rest of creation." And so he says, male and female, he created them. In his image and likeness, he created them. We were made in the image and likeness of God. You were made in the image and likeness of God. Well, what does it mean to be made in God's image? That we bear his image, that we somehow look like God? Well, it means a lot of things. But one of the things that it means is that as image bearers of God, we bear his creativeness. So I don't know you very well, but I can guess that there are people in this room that are really good at music. They're really good at playing it, writing it, singing it. There are people here that are really good at sports, athletics, dancing. There are people here that can paint, that can sketch, that can capture beauty in that way. That there are programmers here. There are coders. We can create things. We can write beautiful things. This is the image of God that is made in all of our hearts. We all reflect him in different ways. There are things that make you tick. There are things that you are passionate about, that excite you, that bring you life. That is the mark of God in you. We're not God. We're creatures. There's one God. But we all bear his image. We bear that spark within us. And another way that we image God is the fact that we are able to love. We're able to choose to love people, and God delights in that. He delights in everything about you, by the way. He loves your creativeness. He loves your passion. He loves your talents. He loves you. He created you. He knows everything about you. And when he looks at you, his eyes just sparkle. He just thinks you're amazing. And he created you with the ability to love other people as well. I'm sure that there are people in your life that you love, that you care for, that you provide for. In this way, we also image God. But in order to love, God had to make us free, because robots can't love. You can't love through instinct. We have to be free to love, which means that we're also free to choose not to love. We're free to choose evil things as well. And this is where our story gets a little bit complicated. This is where our story gets a little bit complicated. Because before God created humans, God created a completely separate class of beings called angels. Angels are real too. God created angels to live with him in heaven, to worship him, to be in relationship with him there. And one angel in particular, one of the most beautiful and glorious angels, his name was Lucifer. And Lucifer decided that he would not serve God. And in his arrogance and in his rebellion, he led a third of the other angels in heaven against him. Now they were defeated and they were cast out of heaven. And because they couldn't get back at this all-powerful God, even angels are nothing compared to the power of God, they decided to bring their battle, like a proxy war, to earth. They decided that they were going to hurt what God loves most, human beings, as a way to get back at the Creator. And so, Lucifer became known as the devil, Satan, he goes by many different names. But in the form of a serpent, he came and tempted our very first parents, Adam and Eve. And he convinced them to eat fruit from a tree that God had told them, don't eat this or you will die. And how the enemy did this was so cunning. This is the enemy of the human race. He weasels his way into the garden and he tells them, you will not die. He says, you will not die. He directly contradicts God and he whispers the very first lie to them. And then he introduces fear into their hearts. He says, if you eat this fruit, God knows that you will be like him. And Adam and Eve now have this fear in their heart. I'm missing out on something. God's holding back something from me that will make me better. Of course, this is a lie too, because Adam and Eve were already made in God's likeness. They already looked like him. They were already made in his image. And yet this lie and this fear takes root in their heart and they sin. They fall. They disobey God. And they eat from that fruit. And in that moment, humanity lost the battle. Humanity lost the war. We lost the very first battle against evil. And that dominion that God had given us over all of creation, we surrendered that to the devil. The devil then became the prince of this whole world. And all of Adam and Eve's descendants including all of us here in the room, we entered into that same slavery to sin and death. Now, all of us died. Now, you might be thinking, well, this doesn't seem very fair. Like, how come just because Adam and Eve fell, the rest of us are saddled with this guilt? The rest of us die. The rest of us get sick. We don't live in this perfect world anymore. Well, two things. First, Adam and Eve weren't the only ones that rebelled against God, because I hate to break it to you, but myself, yourself, we've chosen things that we knew were wrong too, haven't we? We've chosen things that we knew would take us away from God. We've chosen things that we knew would hurt ourselves, would hurt others. And Adam and Eve weren't there when we did it, so we can't put all of the blame on them. But we also see, even here on earth now, that what parents do can negatively impact their children, can't they? Maybe some of you have experienced that yourself. In families where there's addiction, where there's alcoholism, often that is passed down, maybe not directly through addiction, but through trauma to children. It's not fair, but it happens, right? Or parents can be fighting with each other, which leads children to have difficulties in their relationships because they never saw love modeled well. Parents, even the best of parents, like I have awesome parents. I praise God for my parents. Like they're beautiful, they have a loving family, they love each other, but even they're not perfect. No parents are perfect. And even the best of parents can say things that wound their children. And maybe you've heard things like, why can't you be more like your sibling? Are you going to be a failure your whole life? Like, these things can really cut deep. Abandonment can go deep. So we see this taking place. And it's all stemmed from our first parents, Adam and Eve. Now, as a result of the fall, we now experience this battle in a losing battle, in a way that we just can't seem to get ahead. And it says there's no distinction, for all have sinned and fall short of the glory of God. Every single one of us have lost this battle, not just Adam and Eve, we've lost this battle and we've fallen short of the glory of God. And we also see that we're in this losing battle and that we are not able to break free of these sins, these poisons, these toxins that we've introduced into our own life. I know that I have experienced this myself. I remember once I was in college, I was at a party, and I got absolutely hammered, absolutely drunk. I don't even remember exactly what happened that night. All I know is that I woke up far from my house in the middle of a snowdrift. Yeah, it was bad. So I woke up in this snowdrift. Thank God I woke up, because I could have died that night. But woke up in the snowdrift and made my way home. And of course I wake up the next morning and I'm puking and my head hurts and I'm like, oh, why did I do this? I'm never drinking again. I drank again. I drank the next weekend and the same thing happened. I didn't wake up in a snowdrift. But why do I do this? Why do we do this? Why do we choose things that we know are bad for us when we can't seem to shake them? It's all the temptations of the enemy, the same that he did with Adam and Eve. We fall into greed. We want to build up our status through money and having stuff, through gluttony, through eating too much food, through drinking too much, through drugs, through all the pleasures that the world has to offer, through lust, through pride, through being jealous of others, building up a social media presence that shows the world how awesome I am, but inside I'm dying and I don't actually love myself. These are how the devil tempts us. We're fighting a losing battle. We can't seem to shake these things. And then, when you're down, the devil hits you with a lie, just like he did with Adam and Eve. He says things like, you're always going to be this way. This is who you are now. You might as well get used to this. You might as well scrape what little happiness you can out of this. You're disgusting. No one could love someone like you. You ever heard anything like that? Maybe people have actually told you something like that, or maybe for some reason you just believe it. That's the serpent whispering in your ear these lies. And he does this because he wants to steal your identity. Remember, God created you out of love. God created you for this glorious life with him, God created you to be with him forever in eternity. That's what God gave you. That's your identity in him. The devil doesn't like you believing that. So he'll come, he'll tempt you to sin, and then he'll whisper lies to you. Why? So that you believe these things about yourself. It's not identity theft. Sorry, it's not identity loss, it's identity theft. He's thefted your identity. And then he uses fear to cement it into you. He uses fear to cement it. I've seen this happen with so many different people. I remember I was once talking with someone, this was long before I became a priest, and he told me that when he was a young guy, he had been attacked by a gang of other people, and they were from a different race than he was. Doesn't matter what race he was, it doesn't matter what race they were. But he had nightmares from that moment on, every single night that he was being attacked. Every single night, he lived in this fear. And from that fear, the enemy was able to whisper a lie to him. Everyone who looks like them is bad. You can't trust them. They're all like that. And at first he was like, that doesn't make sense. But he believed it for so long that it flowered into sin. He became a real-life racist. He hated people who looked like the people that attacked him when he was young. This is the cycle of sin. Sin, fears, lies, they just compound. They're like this vortex that sucks us down. I remember even more extreme example of when I was in Detroit. I was outside of a clinic where people were performing abortions there. And I was there that day with a group of friends, and we were trying to convince the women that were going in to change their minds, to choose life for their children. And one boyfriend dropped his girlfriend off, and he was outside smoking, and I went up to talk with him, and I tried to encourage him to go in and bring his girlfriend out. And I said to him, you're a good guy. You know, you can do the right thing. And he said, I'm not a good guy. I said, no, you are a good guy. Like, let me help you do the right thing. And he cut me off. He said, I'm not good. I'm not good. Stop saying that. He said, that woman in there is not my wife. My wife's at home with the kids. I can't let her know. And she's not the first person I brought here either. Right, so what's going on in his heart? What's going on in his heart? Fear. He's afraid his wife is going to find out. He's afraid of starting families with all these different women. And what does the enemy do? He comes in with a lie. You got yourself into this mess. You got to take care of it yourself. Just a couple $100 and you'll be fine. You got to settle this. And then the sin takes place. This is the story of the human race. It's happened with all of us. It's happened with me. I was raised in an amazing Catholic family, like I mentioned, with beautiful parents. They trained me how to love the Lord, and yet, later on in life, I began to live a double life. I started to live in ways that I knew were wrong. I would live one way with certain people, and I would live another way with churchy people. And I was afraid. I would have nightmares too. Nightmares that my parents would figure me out. They would discover who I really was. And the enemy whispered a lie into my heart that I believed, which was that if people knew who I truly was, they would never love me. And I believed that. I believed that about my family. I believed that about everyone else in the world, and I believed it about God. So much so, I didn't believe God loved me. And when I would go to confession, because that's what good Catholic boys do, I would go to confession and I would lie through my teeth to the priest. I wouldn't tell him everything that I had done. It was all a show. This is the story of all of us. All of us in our own ways have gone astray. We're bound in sin. And it's very dismal because it doesn't seem like there's any hope of us getting out ourselves. The enemy is just too powerful. The lure of all these things that are bad for us, it's just too potent. We can't seem to shake it. So we're chained, we're locked. Now, some of you maybe came into this retreat aware of this. You know that there's a battle going on for your soul. You can feel it. You can feel the pull from all these different things. And you've come to this retreat because you want to learn how to actually win this war. But some of you maybe came to this retreat and you're like, Brother Isaac, I was expecting some campfires, maybe some games. Like, I wasn't expecting to hear all of this super bad, heavy stuff on the very first night. And probably a lot of you were somewhere in between. And you could feel something, but you weren't entirely sure what it is. Well, I just want to tell all of you, Take a deep breath. It's the first night. Okay? There's a lot more coming. The story doesn't end here. Okay? The story does not end here. Hang in there. This is just the first day. But this is a battle, and we need to come to terms with the fact that this is a battle because the stakes are very high, because the stakes are you. The stakes are your identity, your life. And the people that have invited you to this retreat, they care about you, and they love you, and they want you here because they want this to make an impact on you. They want this to make an impact on who you are and the person that you become. There's a battle for your soul. So don't forget, God loves you. He really does. You're his delight. He wants you to know him. He wants you to experience him. And if you stay with this, if you really press into this retreat, if you really, really enter in, you will experience God. You will experience he is real and that he loves you. But we have to start with the grim reality that we find ourselves in. So tonight, what I invite you to do is to spend some time, before next morning, before the next session, spend some time thinking about your own life. The lies, the fears, the sins that you've brought to this retreat. Either ones that you've locked yourself in, or ones that other people have locked you in, because both of them affect us. Right? Both of them affect us. Reflect on some of those chains that are keeping you bound, that are sucking your soul out, that are bringing you to that spiritual death, emptying you of that creativity, of that beauty that God wants you to flourish in. Spend some time thinking about that and hang in there because there's more coming tomorrow. So thank you so much for letting me speak with you, and I'll see you in the morning.